Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, this is being filmed early because on the day that this is being broadcast, which is Tuesday, I will have been in court at the High Courts of Justice, listening to the Daily Mirror's barrister, yes, Aurora, you exult as well in Matty's success, in the barrister for the Mirror Group eating crow and not doing a very good job of it either. But we will come to that on Thursday because I couldn't do it justice today. So I have done this early so that I could post it on time and be available in the Royal Courts of Justice to listen to the Mirror eating crow, as I just said. So bear with me if things are slightly out of sync. But we're going to start on another positive note. Two things. The first one is Jacinth Donaldson, who is a Jamaican, has been one of the many Jamaicans who have sent me glorious messages. Wonderful Jamaicans, completely disapproving of what Meghan Markle has been doing and how she and Harry have been playing the colour card to the detriment of racial harmony. And I have chosen the shortest and sweetest of them all, which is from Jacinth Donaldson, who says, "Ari Jamaican daughter, spot on as usual. Great seeing you." And I say, Ari, sister. And then I have to say, as the patron of the Cavalier King Charles Club nationally, that on Coronation Day, a very inspired lady by the name of Jenny Matthews, who owns Love My Human, who are pet groomers on the King's Road in London, organised a parade of Cavalier King Charles Spaniels who walked down with one or two others, it has to be said, I noticed, who walked down the King's Road, 150 dogs in all, and evidently there could have been more, but it was pouring with rain, and I don't know about their Cavalier King Charles, but I can tell you, mine don't like the rain. But it was a howling success. It was extremely wonderful to behold. I've seen clippings and a video of it, and I just couldn't resist saying, Jenny Matthews, wonderful. Now, the next thing we need to do is have some inspired person, and it can't be me, offer the Queen, who is a dog lover, a Cavalier King Charles, because it's only appropriate. They are named after this king's predecessor, Charles II, who went everywhere with his Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. So we will now plunge in with Juanita Osgatarp. Hope I pronounced it properly if I didn't. Grovel. Why does Harry now live in the USA, where freedom of the press is a constitutional right, if he is against freedom of the press. In America, that is one of the freedoms we have. Harry and Meghan want to control the news with what they say about them, and that is not how that works. Well, that is how they work. And actually, there is no better way of trying to defeat the freedoms that people have than confronting them head on, as Harry and Meghan are doing. So if your stance is, as theirs is, censorship, muzzling the press, forcing people to say what they want to be said about them, no better place to do it than the United States of America. Of course, they have an uphill struggle, but that's, for instance, why he's joined the Aspen Institute. Because their uphill struggle is that it is enshrined as an amendment, the first amendment, if I am not mistaken, to the American Constitution. So for them to prevail, they will have to spearhead a movement that will ultimately result in the revocation or amendment of the First Amendment, which doesn't only guarantee freedom of press, it guarantees freedom of congregation, freedom of worship. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Harry and Meghan also, even though they haven't articulated it, take the view that anybody who disagrees with them, including in spiritual terms, is evil and should therefore be shut down. This is the neo-puritanical attitude of people who pretend to be liberals but are in fact illiberals. It's called Puritanism. It's what happened in Britain between 1649 and 1660. King Charles I, on the scaffold, in his last speech ever, made the point that they were chopping off his head because he was the guardian of people's liberties. Let's chew on that for what it's worth, because history is usually written by the victors, and the victors got in the story that Charles I was trying to suppress Parliament, when in fact it's Parliament that was not only suppressing the rights of the king, but the rights of Parliament itself. Because to succeed in their revolution, and it was a revolution, the Puritans not only disbanded Parliament by preventing anybody who didn't agree with them from turning up for Parliament, and if you did, you stood a very good chance of losing your head. So of course people shied away from it. So they weren't only against the king, they were against Parliament itself. And the majority of Parliament fell by the wayside as Oliver Cromwell created a military dictatorship with the new model army. It was under the guise of parliamentary protection of rights of Parliament. It was actually an abuse of the rights of the parliamentarians in the majority who did not agree with what was going on, as well as the king. History history is often rather more nuanced than people realise if they care to study it. I learned a long time ago, don't take anyone's word for anything important. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions, if you have good judgment and wish to know the truth. If you don't, well, swallow the rubbish whole. But I'm sure most people listening to what I'm saying relish the truth, because my understanding is that the people who are members of this channel or look at this channel are by and large the most intelligent, sophisticated, well-informed group of people on Facebook. And since this is Facebook is a massive entity, it is the old ancient Library of Alexandria, which burnt down when Julius Caesar was visiting Cleopatra in Alexandria. So that's how long ago it burnt down. It was a great tragedy. It was the greatest library of all time. We now have it reconstituted in the form of the internet, and to a large extent in the form of YouTube. And that is why Harry and Meghan are both determined to shut down not only the mainstream media that disagree with them, but the rest of the media, not mainstream, YouTube, etc. Hence, their bots, paid bots by their PR people, who, according to the paid bots, were paid by them. So, if it's untrue, we can blame the bots who say they were paid by Harry and Meghan. And it's their error, not ours. So, let's rock and roll with this one, because I don't think this is an issue that's going away anytime soon. And it's very important that we know what's going on and we fight our corner. Civil liberties have been fought for very hard over the centuries. We can't afford to lose them, and certainly not to a brain-dead idiot of a prince and his calculating, manipulating study in artifice, sidekick and wife. Christine Widgley says, what about his latest court case? I read he will spend 3 days in the UK, and I'm going to take this and the other as one. And Judith Fitzsimmons says, how will Harry manage when he has to come back for the court cases if he can only stay one night? I think there might be a little bit of confusion as to what my eminent accountant friend's point was. You are, as a British citizen who is removing himself from the tax resident status of a United Kingdom tax resident, he is only allowed to be in this country, whether it's on holiday or for any other reason, for a finite number of days per annum, for a set period of time. According to my accountant friend, that is until 2026. He is allowed to stay here for a certain number of nights. It's not only days, it's nights. They changed the calculation slightly, so it's nights are the main thing at this point. Depending on, insofar as I understand, and I could be wrong, but depending on the period in which he's now, and he only has a certain number of nights that he can stay here for. The calculations also are, because in Britain our tax year is not the same as the calendar year. I think that's true in the United States as well. So calendar year and tax year are variables and you have to fit into the one that is relevant to your tax status. Now remember, Harry was here for the Queen's funeral. So he was here for an already extended period of time. He is supposed to be coming back to testify in the Mirror Group action. I would imagine after that, he's not going to be able to be coming back here that much until, because I suspect he will have eaten out, or up might be a better word. He will have eaten up his allotted nights in the United Kingdom, failing which he becomes liable for British tax. It's as simple as that. Now you will doubtless hear as an excuse that they have to celebrate Archie's christening, or Archie's first communion, or Lilibet's deification, or Meghan's promotion from demigoddess to goddess, or Harry's revelation that he's just a human being with a dodgy todger. That's right. Or some such thing. But they'll come up with something to explain away the fact that it's all about money. Everything with them, which means everything with her, because he wasn't like this before. But, you know, when you enter a Faustian bargain with what appears to us to be the devil, you do sell your soul. And you have to go along with what Mephistopheles wants. And in this case, Mephistopheles wants a lot of money, and Mephistopheles wants to be able to have as much money as she can gain access to, so that should she need it to be transferred from community assets to Meghan exclusivity, she will be able to accomplish that hat trick along with the many others she has so far accomplished. Okay, so I hope that clears it up. One or two people said things like, oh, if he comes on holiday, it doesn't matter what he comes for. Holiday, holiday, no, none of it matters. The purpose doesn't count. He's not allowed to be here for more than a finite numbers of nights per annum from now until 2026. Let's remember that as we keep on being fed drivel as to why these noble, worthy, self-sacrificing victims of racism and cruelties that the world has inflicted upon them are just having to suffer so greatly that they can't come back to Britain, or on the other hand, that when they come back, they're so noble that they have to chase back across the Atlantic Ocean for noble motives. Well, chasing after filthy lucre is not a noble motive. So, Sharon Mack says, "Dear Lady Colin, will you be commenting on the Phillip Schofield situation?" Yes, I will. Yes, I will. To those of you who don't know, Phillip Schofield is an odious, for much of his life, closet queen who is a malicious, a vicious, nasty, and targets people, especially people who have integrity, something he has flagrantly lacked all of his life. And one of the people he attacked was me. Now, I didn't even know who Phillip Schofield was. I don't look at television. I'm too busy. And quite frankly, even if I wasn't too busy, I'd much rather read a good book than look at Phillip Schofield and Holly the Dolly, his sidekick Holly Willoughby, who I've met and she was perfectly charming. But I'll tell you about Phillip Schofield. When I came out of the jungle, and to those of you who don't know, I was in the Australian jungle as a part of the I'm a Celebrity team of 2015. And I became the most Googled living individual for 2015. I had no idea what was going on or about any of this. And I discovered when I came out that Phillip Schofield had developed a great hatred of me. Now, this is somebody I'd never met, never crossed paths with. He knew nobody who knew me to the best of my knowledge. But I clearly antagonized him because I'm very straightforward and forthcoming, and he is as crooked as a corkscrew in terms of straightforwardness. He is devious, manipulative, he is completely lacking in integrity. And I think one of the things Phillip Schofield disliked about me, aside from my straightforwardness, was the fact that I have always A, been open, and B, been dignified about the fact that I was born with a birth defect. And admittedly, it bears no relationship to his personal dilemma, as it was, but because he was a greedy, ambitious phony who was lying. He lied to his wife, he clearly lied to his children, he lied to everybody publicly, although he was well known to be a raging poofter of the highest order, to use the vernacular, in the media industry. And also he was well known to be a hugely nasty piece of work, but came across very pleasantly on television. He's one of the few public figures that I can think of who was a good enough actor so that the mask never slipped when he was performing. He should have been teaching Meghan Markle a few lessons in being a really good phony, because he was a good phony. I came out of the jungle, and one of the things he did was he asked my agent if they could interview me for a significant sum of money. And my agent said yes. And I knew nothing about him. I didn't even know who he was. And then the night before the interview, he cancelled it without any explanation. And there went the fee. And I was doing this for Goring. I said, I'm whoring for Goring. And I made no bones about it. I was doing it purely for the money to assist with the refurbishment of Castle Goring. So anyway, I still knew nothing about him at that point. Then my son Dima told me, no, he didn't tell me then. That's right, he didn't. Yes, I think he did. I mean, it's so long ago and so much has happened since then. But anyway, at some point, whenever it was, I discovered through my son Dima that Phillip Schofield didn't like me. Well, I thought it's ridiculous. And yes, that's right, I knew it before. That's when Dima told me. Because a few weeks later, or a few months later, I don't remember when now, Dima and I were at the National Television Awards. And Dima was a little bit behind me, about 5 feet behind me. So it wasn't apparent that we were together. And I was ostensibly on my own. And somebody walked by me and tried to push me over. And I actually thought that they lost their balance and bumped into me. And I remember saying, oh, excuse me. But I had obviously picked up that maybe it wasn't such an accident unconsciously. But I did think it was accidental. And Dima said to me, oh, that's Phillip Schofield. He can't stand you. He was really nasty about you when you were in the jungle. And I'd forgotten who Phillip Schofield was. I mean, he's very self-important, but I'd completely forgotten that he was the TV presenter who had chucked the interview with me. And so Dima, and that brightened my eyes, so to speak, and opened them as to what Phillip Schofield was about. And Dima said he'd obviously done it to knock you over. So, I mean, can you imagine a grown man trying to knock over a grown woman? And we're both older. We're not young. Because he doesn't like me because I'm straightforward and not a phony and fraud like him. I just thought, this guy's seriously sick. Then there was another incident, which I can't remember now, something to do with, oh yes, I now remember. So I'm now doing the Harry and Meghan book. And Phillip Schofield gets in touch with my agent and wants to interview me on his show. And I said to my agent, David, this is ridiculous. I mean, why would Phillip Schofield want to interview me when he hates me? I said, and oh, sorry, there was another incident. That's right, sorry. When I published my Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother book, that's right, I'd forgotten this. This was before I'm even in the jungle. They got in touch with my publishers and wanted to interview me and the launch of the Queen Mother book was on a Friday, and they wanted to interview me on the Monday. It was on the Friday morning for their show on the Monday. They didn't have a show on the Saturday or Sunday, evidently. And I was already going to be interviewed by American and European television. And they said they needed an exclusive. And my publisher decided that it would be better for the book if I was interviewed by Phillip Schofield rather than American and European television, because the book at that stage wasn't being published in Europe or the United States. That's not so. It was published in the United States as well. But I think it was published a little bit after. That's right. And I went to the United States, gratis, St. Martin's Press, and the wonderful Sally Richardson and the marvellous Hope Dellon, who was my editor and is now dead, sadly. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, because this is getting awfully boring, I'm sure, for you. Phillip Schofield on the Monday morning pulled the plug on it. I thought nothing of it because this sort of thing happens quite often in television. Didn't even remember it, so that when I came out of the jungle and he did it a second time, it didn't particularly ring bells. But when he tried to push me over, everything then immediately connected up and really rang bells. So fast forward, a few years have passed, maybe 3, 2, however long, I don't remember now. And I am publishing the Meghan and Harry book, and he wants me. They have approached us and want to interview me. And I said, it's a setup. I'm not doing it. I don't want to. Oh, no, it's a good thing. It's a good for the book, blah, blah, blah. So my publisher, my agent, and I all agreed that either he was going to ambush me or he was going to pull the plug at the 99th hour. So I didn't know which one he was going to do. Sure enough, he tried to ambush me, which was the biggest mistake he made, because I launched in and laced into him and told him that he was ignorant. And then when he attacked me quite viciously, as only a closet queen can attack someone who is open about everything. But he was so deeply in the closet that he loathed anybody who had integrity and who actually had the courage and the decency to be herself, or I suppose if you were a man, to be himself. Then, during the interview, and you can look at it, it's on YouTube, I accused him of lacking integrity. And in an interview, what happens is he has on a headpiece, and obviously the people in the control booth, because it was live, said to him, keep on talking, because I was accusing him of being a fraud, a phony, ignorant, and lacking in integrity, all of which I stand by, incidentally, and being a nasty piece of work as well, and ignorant to boot with it all. And so they made him continue talking, and that way they drowned out what I was saying. I drowned out what he was saying, but nobody. So the whole thing is gobbledygook. Then in launches Holly the dolly, because then I managed to get across the point about integrity. And what's integrity? She didn't know what integrity was. Well, she's now discovered that when you lie with a rat with fleas, don't be surprised if some of them jump on you and bite you, because he has done to her what he has done to everybody else. He misled her. he knew his brother was up on charges of misconduct, and I'm not going to say any more because this is YouTube. Of his brother is a middle-aged man, and as is Phillip Schofield, actually older, even older than middle-aged. And both brothers have had an unseemly interest in young men, because Phillip Schofield had to out himself when somebody he was mentoring, very young man he was mentoring, and they fell out. And insofar as I recall, and I could be wrong, and I say this for legal reasons, but I think the gist is more or less accurate. Either the young man was going to go to the press, or the press got a hold of it. And I'm not going to mention the journalist who got a hold of it, because he's somebody I respect and admire, and I don't want to bring his name into this at this point. And Phillip Schofield cut a deal with the newspaper that he would out himself, because he was going to be outed. And the young man, who I think was still a teenager, over the age of consent, but a teenager, the brother got into trouble because his interest in the youth was obviously on a similar plane as Phillip Schofield's with this young man he was mentoring, but the brother committed the cardinal error of that the young man was under the age of consent. Not very under it, but under it. While Phillip Schofield's chap was at least a year or two, or maybe even 3 over the age of consent. But still, a massive age gap, because Phillip Schofield at the time was a man well into his 50s, with 2 children and a wife who was completely ignorant of what was going on. Well, he didn't tell Holly the Dolly, who had spent years condoning his vicious attacks on all sorts of public figures. Not only me, the list is legion of the people he had a go at. He's a nasty piece of work. And she would just and grin along with it until his brother is found. He, first of all, tries to save his skin and his career by disclaiming that he any longer has a brother. So, aside from being a phony and a fraud and having no integrity, he's now proven himself to be a treacherous piece of so-and-so as well. Because, excuse me, Phillip Schofield, you still have a brother. You said you no longer had a brother. Sorry, you have a brother. Decent people may hate the sin, but they still love the sinner. And you and your brother had a very close relationship. And your brother went to you for help and support. And you appeared to give it. And when he was found guilty, you dumped him ignominiously to save yourself. You are the lowest of the low. And Holly Willoughby at this stage is livid, quite rightly so too, because she is now compromised as well. because she has been misled, she has been totally ignorant of what went on, and that Phillip Schofield was up to hair, up to hair in helping his brother with the case, and which I'm not condemning him for, because I don't think that the brother should have done what he did. But Phillip Schofield, I mean, there's only about 3 or 4 years between what each of them was doing with the other boy. So, I mean, it's really a case of maybe kettle is a little bit less black than pot, but both of them are pretty black. And she wants out now, and she should get out, and she should, of course, their career is supposedly being patched up, and they are not on speaking terms. She wants out. Dame Caroline McCall, I think that's a name you might know from the past. She managed to get rid of Piers Morgan when he was speaking the truth about Meghan, but she's trying to force Holly the Dolly to continue associating with Phil the Geek, His Majesty of the Closet. Well, I think the likelihood is that his career is over, thank God, because he is a nasty, vicious piece of work. He never should have been the success he was, but he was very good at presenting a totally fraudulent facade of what he was to the public, and they bought it. So to that extent, he was a superb performer. But I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, ask anybody in the industry about Phillip Schofield, and they will tell you he is the lowest of the low. He's a nasty piece of work. He's filth and scum. And Phillip Schofield, if you don't like what I've said, sue me and I'll see you in court, because you are filth and scum. You have no integrity. Your only principle is the furtherance of your ambition and your professional success. And you have achieved it with lying, cheating, fraud. That's what you have done. So I hope, Sharon Mack, that answers your question. I would love to see Phillip Schofield off the screen and condemned to the ignominy that his character and true personality deserve. Scum. CJP says, "Hello, Lady C. Thank you for your program. I learn and have a lot of fun, especially your chic and sarcastic laugh at the same time. Could you talk about the York sisters, Princess Eugenie and Beatrice? Are they royal workers or not? Are they reliable or not? They seem to be 50-50 in and out. B is a state councillor, but neither was on the balcony, and their husbands have jobs or businesses independent of the royal family. But Beatrice and Eugenie and B collaborate with some organizations, but do not seem to be officially royal working members. Thanks and regards." They are not working royals, but I hope they will become working royals. You know, I know that some people tar them with the brush of their parents. It's not right. The sins of the father and mother should not fall on the children to the third and fourth generation. They shouldn't fall on the children at all. And I've only met those girls briefly. They're not friends of mine. We're in completely different sets, obviously. They're young enough to be, well, not quite my granddaughters, but certainly young enough to be my daughters. And everything I hear about them is good. And you cannot condemn Eugenie especially for having a degree of loyalty to a cousin she was brought up with and has loved all her life. She is not, according to some people who speculate that she is Mercury, taking news back and forth. It's not true. They are good girls. They are good royal, when they do royal duties, they do them brilliantly. There is a need for additional members of the family, and I am very much in favor of them being upgraded to becoming fully fledged working members of the royal family, if they want it. Now, Eugenie's about to have another baby, so no matter what, she's not going to be able for the foreseeable future to be a working royal. But Beatrice, yeah, why not? And she's very good at but they're both good at what they do. And for all their mother's failings, she has done exemplary charity work all over the world, and she deserves credit for that. I mean, yeah, she can be embarrassing and she can be stupid and have silly judgment and do silly things, but she also, by and large, has her heart in the right place, even if her mouth is often where it shouldn't be. And I don't need to go into anything about their father. I think my sentiments on the subject are already well known. Beatrice is a councillor of state, as is required because of Harry's absence and, to an extent, their father's difficulties. I think they should be working members of the royal family. And I can tell you, within 6 months, once people got used to them and saw how good they are at what they do, and that they are really nice girls, everything, all the speculation, all the meanness would be left behind. And it's just a matter of the king biting the bullet and allowing them in. He needs to reverse, as I have been saying for years, and I'm glad my fellow Leo and contemporary Princess Anne has backed me up on this. We don't need more streamlining. We need less streamlining. Lynn Morris says, "This woman, Dr. Shola, is one of the worst race baiters on British TV. I couldn't agree more." And I'm going to read out something from Tink Taylor, because she has provided a brilliant potted biography of Shouty Shola, as she is called, who is a disgusting race baiter. Disgusting, and like many people, guiltier than sin of the very crimes she's accusing others of, because she is a descendant of slave traders and enslavers who were enslaving their own people, then selling them to the white man. So that's even worse, because they were the ones who gathered up the slaves and then sold them. And they had a degree of loyalty, I would imagine, to their own kind. But it didn't matter. It was all about the money. So I'll read what Tink Taylor says. Shouty Shola is the granddaughter of the late Nigerian monarch, Oba Alfred Oba Fuwa Babington Ashaye, Lengunson III, the Ologere of Ogere, and the daughter of the late Prince Adebayo Babington Ashaye, according to the internet and her personal web page. These leaders were the royal family that profited by selling their own countrymen into slavery. She has no credibility criticizing or lecturing anyone on this topic. Her statements about the alleged blackamoor statues and Camilla were ridiculous and untrue. First of all, I'm going to say, I have blackamoors. I collect blackamoors. I love blackamoors. Blackamoors were not a sign of racism. They were, you do not collect as beautiful artifacts works of art about people you dislike. It's obvious. I mean, the way certain black people have gone about criminalizing and making wrong things that were inoffensive or actually positives is a disgrace. I would like Dr. Shola to put her money where her mouth is. And she should personally give, if she believes in reparations, she should give all of her salary for the rest of her life and all of her family's money and she should start a movement to force the Nigerian royals, who were deeply embedded in the slave trade both before and after the white man and certainly the British were involved. And then she can have a platform for spreading this nonsense that she comes up with. And in the meantime, I wish she just shut her wretched mouth. She is odious in the extreme. Odious. Pamela Cole says, Lady C, perhaps you're not aware of recent research by several recognized bodies. I am actually. Into the likelihood of schizophrenia and paranoia episodes being related to long-term use of cannabinoids in young people, especially males. Since the human brain is still developing until about 25 years of age, that seems to be entirely feasible, especially as males are more likely to be users. Maybe this is why Harry is the way he is. Interesting, don't you think? It is interesting. And I've actually touched upon it before. You cannot exclude, though, that there is an inherent tendency in certain families that predisposes certain people to certain conditions, including schizophrenia and paranoia. Whether Harry has inherited those tendencies, and I would suggest there is evidence to suggest that he did inherit them because his mother exhibited tendencies of both. And I'm not knocking her or blaming her. I'm just stating a fact. Even Prince William has stated that his mother was paranoid. And she was. But whether she was or wasn't, Harry's drug use and the fact that he started it so young, because by his own account, he started it as an early teenager. So the age is relevant because the brain was still developing. And it's quite, whether the drugs exacerbated an underlying tendency or created it is beside the point. The point is that it exists. Also, depression, which you have touched upon, is rage turned inwards. Pot smoking and many of the drugs that Harry takes are demotivators. They turn you in on yourself. They discourage activity and encourage inactivity and contemplation of the navel. Men, more than women, are by nature more inclined to have self-respect when they are doing something they regard as valuable. They are more activity orientated than women. Now, these are facts, so anybody who says that men and women are identical really is chatting rubbish, and I'm not going along with it. And the fact that a man needs to have activity to have self-respect, the more inactive you are, is the less self-respect you have. The less self-respect you have is the more deactivated you become. And the more deactivated you become is the more self-hating you become. And your energy is turned inwards. So instead of being outward and active and gaining self-respect, your energy is turned inwards and becomes rage, which feeds your depression, which leads to greater frustration, which leads to greater rage. So it's a snowballing effect. And if you cannot admit that what you are doing is actually disinhibiting you, but in a negative way, and by disinhibiting you in a negative way is actually disincentivizing you from being positive and productive. So you end up blaming everybody but yourself, when in fact a part of the problem is really simple. You're just doing something wrong. You are, instead of doing something outwards, by doing nothing, you are doing something that eats you up internally. And this passivity doesn't only have a spiraling, snowballing effect downwards, but it also leads to feelings of victimhood and helplessness. Now, you only need to read Spare to know that it should have been Spare Me from Myself. Louise Charbonneau says, his girlfriends might have used the invasion of the media to break up with an immature man who blames everyone for everything, is jealous of his brother, has drug and alcohol issues, and last but not least, anger issues. The Duke of Windsor didn't trash the royals in the media and didn't march himself or the Duchess as publicly as the California couple is doing. Very well put, Louise Charbonneau. Meg Breezy says, with Harry seeming to single out Piers, I believe they are trying to silence him, to take away his freedom of speech. Meghan and Harry both know that Piers has been effective in exposing their lies. I'm on Piers' side. So am I. And Meg Breezy, your observation is very sound. Harry and Meghan would love to shut Piers Morgan down and up. Or up and down, whichever way you want to do it. They'd love to shut him up and they'd love to shut him down. Because he has shone too bright a light on their insufficiencies, their hypocrisy, their pretentiousness, their malevolence. And I'm sure Harry feels that if he can achieve via the Mirror Group action what Meghan achieved via ringing up Dame Caroline McCall and getting Piers fired from ITV, they will have done themselves and their very, what they regard as worthy cause of censoring the press and eliminating detractors and critics such as Piers Morgan. And onwards and upwards, they will say, onwards and upwards, with the great quest of destroying freedom of speech. And on that note, I will say, thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, would you please keep the questions and comments coming in, as I need your input to be able to address issues that you want us to talk about. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless. And if you have really enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care.